We're very happy to have you all here. My name is Miriam Green. I'm the Director of Marketing and Alumni Affairs at American Friends of the Hebrew University. Again, thank you for joining us for the Hebrew University Alumni Association's Torch Talks event. The Hebrew University Alumni Association seeks to engage all HU alumni in the United States to foster a lifelong connection to the university and to connect fellow alumni around the country and around the world. And even before we were all social distancing, we have been and will continue these talks and more events as a way to bring our alumni and friends community together. There are many ways you can get involved with us, from participating in future events, attending or hosting an event when we can all be together in person again, hopefully very soon, sharing your alumni story and photos, sharing job openings to put on our alumni job board, and giving to the Alumni Annual Fund, which supports student scholarships for Hebrew University students, something that is always needed. To learn more, please email alumni@afhu.org. Our last Torch Talks of the spring lineup will be next Monday, April 12th at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, and we will discuss the very important ways of how we can promote health and fight obesity with Professor Aaron Trowan from Hebrew University's Robert H. Smith Faculty of Agriculture, Food, and Environment. A registration link to that event will be put in the chat shortly. To learn more and register for this event and others, please visit afhu.org/events. Today, everyone will be on mute during the presentation, but we will be taking questions at the end. To submit a question, please type it in the chat box and we'll do our best to get to as many as we can. I'm now pleased to introduce our three distinguished speakers today, two of which are Hebrew University alumni, Vladi Kornachino and Dr. Robert Duke, along with Eric Hanson. Vladi studied for his master's degree in archaeology at the Hebrew University from 1974 to 1977. After graduating, he worked in Iran as a university lecturer and archaeologist for several years. His family then settled in LA, where he honed his business skills and built a career in the apparel industry as president and CEO of Addiction. Even while building his business, his passion for archaeology remained an important part of his life. Having worked in China for over 25 years has allowed him to explore many fascinating archaeological sites, including his first visit in 2016 to the Buddhist caves at Mogoa in China's Gobi Desert. Robert Duke, PhD, is an expert in the Hebrew Bible, the Dead Sea Scrolls, and Second Temple Judaism, and is the Azusa Pacific University School of Theology Dean. He has spent almost 4 years studying in the Middle East, which has highly influenced his perspectives and teaching. Visions of Amram, his dissertation from UCLA on the Aramaic Qumran text, was published as the social location of the Visions of Amram, and he has published articles and book chapters in Dead Sea Discoveries, Scandinavian Journal of the Old Testament, and other publications. Duke has also devoted research time to improving pedagogy in biblical studies and investigating how service learning and community-engaged teaching can improve student retention of course material. From 2009 to 2012, Duke chaired the Service Learning and Biblical Studies workshop at the annual Society of Biblical Literature meeting. Among his many awards, Duke received a Rotary Ambassadorial Scholarship to study at Hebrew University in 2000 to 2001 and was a fellow at the Albright Institute for Archaeological Research in 2005. Eric Hanson is CEO of Blue Planet VR and is a faculty member at USC School of Cinematic Arts. He is a visual effects designer who has worked with leading visual effects houses such as Digital Domain, Sony ImageWorks, and Walt Disney Feature Animation. His film work can be seen in The Day After Tomorrow, Castaway, Fantasia 2000, and The Fifth Element, among others. Recent work has led to collaborations with Frontline PBS, the Navajo Nation and Aweiwei, the Smithsonian, and the Dunhuang Foundation. At USC, he leads curriculum in cinematic VR and visual effects. He is a member of the VES, IVRPA, PMA, ACM/SIGGRAPH, and attended the University of Texas at Austin. Vladi, take it away.
Thank you, Miriam. And I would like to thank the American Friends of the Hebrew University for facilitating this webinar and introduce the audience to the fascinating Jewish presence on the ancient Silk Road. My gratitude also goes to the Dunhuang Foundation in Houston and Dunhuang Academy in China for accommodating my research trips at the caves. My first trip to Dunhuang took place some 6 years ago while in Guangzhou organizing the Los Angeles Guangzhou Sister City Association's 35th anniversary and festival. What started as just another trip to explore the beauty and history of China turned into a passion for the Mogao Caves. On my first trip, while strolling through the museum galleries, I came across the Hebrew Scroll. My eyes and heart skipped a blink and a beat. A Jewish traveler and the Hebrew Scroll in that remote part of the world 1,300 years ago. It was an incredible revelation. My involvement with the Dunhuang Foundation enabled me to explore the caves as no ordinary tourist could. I had the privilege to see as many caves as I wanted, mostly close to the public due to preservation, and explore the Academy's library and vault open to the scientific world only. My biggest thrill was to facilitate the translation of the Hebrew Scroll found at the site of the Southern Caves. It took me over 2 years to find and collaborate with the right biblical scholar, Dr. Robert Duke, American professor at Azusa Pacific University and fellow alumni of the Hebrew University, Jerusalem. His knowledge and expertise in biblical texts, including the Dead Sea Scrolls, made him the ideal person for its scholarly translation. With that translation completed, it was presented by the Dunhuang Foundation to the Caves director. During my last trip there in November of 2019, I was assured that the translation would be placed in the museum next to the copy. Original is in Paris, unfortunately. With COVID consuming the entire 2020, that project and the international conference where the scrolls translation was to be presented was shelved. I hope it will be revived in the 2021-2022 season. As Professor Duke will detail during his presentation, it is our belief that the Hebrew Scroll written on paper, only available in China at that time, was written from memory or dictated to a scribe, most likely by a Persian or Babylonian Jewish traveler. We do not know if it was left as a present to the Buddhist monks or was simply lost there. The most important part, though, is the knowledge of this Jewish traveler, or as I call him, the Jewish Marco Polo, that preceded the famous explorer by more than 400 years. With the Hebrew Scroll project completed, the director gave me the unique opportunity to hold in my hands an original Syriac scroll found in the northern caves, and then permission for Dr. Duke to translate that one as well. Syriac is another Semitic language like Hebrew used by early Christians in that part of the world. Dunhuang and subsequently the Mogao Caves would not have existed without the famous Silk Road. Situated in the western reaches of the Heshi Corridor in China's Gansu province, Dunhuang has occupied a strategic position on the Silk Road. It served as a vital passage between China and the rest of Eurasia and stood as a hub between north and south. Starting from Dunhuang, travelers could journey to the ancient capitals of Kaifeng, Xi'an, and Luoyang, and to Central, Western, and South Asia, all the way to the Roman Empire. To the south, travelers could reach Nepal, India, and Burma. Under the Han Dynasty, 206 BCE to 220 CE, the Chinese took control of the Gansu Corridor, opening the door to a transcontinental trade route, thus giving birth to the Silk Road. Seals made by hand in China were being worn by the elites from cities all over the Mediterranean, including Rome, Carthage, France, England, Persia, and Central Asia. Before Marco Polo made the Silk Road famous, foreign traders from as far as Judea, Israel today, the Persian Empire, Russia, Rome, Athens traveled on the Silk Road through China to India and beyond. Surrounding the Silk Road of Dunhuang are several spectacular clusters of caves excavated from the rock cliffs in the Gobi Desert. The largest is the Mogao site, with about 735 individual caves, 45,000 square meters of wall paintings, more than 2,000 painted sculptures, and some 50,000 artifacts from the library cave. Here we have the largest cave there, containing a 35.5 meter tall Buddha. This is cave 96. The earliest cave in Macau, according to records, was constructed by a traveling monk named Le Zun around 336 CE, and construction of the caves continued till the end of the 1400s, when the site was abandoned. The Silk Road promoted not only trade, but also the spread of religions like Judaism, Christianity, Zoroastrian, Buddhism, and later Islam. The Chinese emperors were very tolerant towards other religions, thus enabling the rapid development of trade. It was the revenue from this trade that sparked an economic boom for the Chinese Empire in general, and for the border town of Dunhuang in particular. It was this wealth that enabled the rich families to sponsor the Buddhist monks for the construction of hundreds of caves all along Macau for thousands of years. In 1900, a Buddhist monk, Wang Lu, discovered the library cave containing a huge treasure of more than 50,000 manuscripts dating from the 4th century CE to the 11th century CE. The manuscripts were written on paper, silk, wood, and other materials, and in many languages like Sanskrit, Tibetan, Uyghur, Khotonese, Mongolian, and Hebrew, in addition to Chinese. The early explorers of the caves were Paul Pelliot and the Jewish Hungarian British explorer Aurel Stein, that besides the Hebrew scroll discovered at the Macau caves, also found at the caves of Dunhuang Caves a Judeo-Persian Hebrew business letter dated to 718 CE. From it, we learned that a Persian-speaking Jewish trader was writing to another Persian Jewish merchant regarding a transaction in commodities. Most manuscripts and art were taken by the early explorers to their home countries, thus robbing China of their national treasures. Only a small part of the library cave materials are still in China. Here we have a perfect example of a looted wall mural by Longdon Warner and taken to Harvard University in 1924, as he could not find any more scrolls. To the right, as you see, is the cave today with that piece missing, and to the left, a copy of it in the Macau Museum. In the 11th century, the monks sealed the cave in order to hide its contents from impending wars. It remains thankfully sealed for 900 years. The library cave number 17 is located on the north side of the corridor leading to cave 16. It has an area of about 7.8 square meters. Originally was built in 851.
You did show me.
851 to 867 CE in the Tang Dynasty as a memorial chapel dedicated to an eminent monk, Hong Bian. Professor Hanson will go into more details of this cave in his presentation. The role of the Jewish merchants on the Silk Road. China's first contact with the Jewish people came as a result of the development of the Silk Road, linking China with the Middle East and Europe, that incorporated existing trade routes established 200 years earlier by the Persian Achaemenid Empire. One theory is that the first Persian Jews settled in Kaifeng at around 75 CE, and in larger numbers after 231 CE due to persecution in their home countries. The truly first large wave of Jewish merchants to China traveled from West Asia over the Silk Road and by sea via India during the Tang Dynasty, 618 to 907 CE. And we have documented traces of the travels from the scrolls found in Dunhuang, Dunhuang, and Ningxia, as I mentioned before. Babylonian and Persian Jews traveling along the Silk Road received the Tang Emperor's blessing to ultimately reside in Kaifeng. Kaifeng was the capital of the Song Dynasty from 960 CE to 1126 CE and opened its doors to thousands of Arabs and Persians, many of them Jewish. A close examination of the Jewish Haggadah points out to the extensive use in it of the Persian language and that the ritual belonged to the Jewish Iraqi Persian community. A massive synagogue built in 1161 CE, accommodating a population of over 500 families, some say up to 3,000 people by most accounts, is a testament to the vibrant Jewish community there. A Chinese document from the 9th century CE notes that the Jewish merchants spoke many languages: Arabic, Persian, Latin, French, Spanish, and Slavic, an immense advantage in the trade business. Chinese coins of the time used bilingual Chinese and Semitic letters. Jews are called Yutai Ren, similar phonetic with Yehudai. Another given name was Tiao Jin Jiao, translated religion that removes the sin, referencing to dietary restrictions on pork. Furthermore, Chinese Jews had specific names like Ai, Gao, Jin, Li, Zhang, and Zhao. These names represented a signification of names like Ezra, Shimon, Cohen, Gilbert, Levi, Joshua, and Jonathan. Two names in particular, Jin and Shi, correspond to typical Jewish names like gold and stone. Undoubtedly, the Jews made important contributions in the Silk Road business activities as indicated by numbers of sources. Though many of these sources point to the Chinese as the key players on the Silk Road carrying silk and other items from the East, selling or bartering their goods to the Asian middlemen, who in turn traded the merchandise to the Persians, Syrians, and Greek Jewish merchants, which then sold these goods throughout the Roman and later Byzantine Empire. Here we have small ceramic sculptures of a Jewish confectionery from the 7th century CE. This is a Jewish merchant from 9th century CE, and please pay attention to the outfits, the hats, the object in his hands, the beard. He is another Jewish merchant from Xi'an during the Tang Dynasty. Foreign delegates at the Emperor's Court from Cave 103 at Mogao. This delegate has not been identified by the Mogao Cave people, and I wonder why. Here we have another group of foreign traders from Cave 45, also in Mogao, being attacked by bandits. And here, looking at the outfits, we can see quite a lot of similarities. Interestingly enough, we have here Israelites from a Nineveh obelisk from 7th to 9th century BCE. Nineveh, that it's Iraq today, Babylon, and then Iraq today. And we are looking at their outfits. Once again, we can see quite a lot of similarities. And don't forget, this is 1600 years before our Persian travelers that I showed before. So looking at their outfits and going back to the frescoes, and in particular those sculptures, we can see quite a lot. Many times those renderings and sculptures were misinterpreted or misidentified as Sogdians, another Semitic population coming from the same part of the world. Obviously, a lot more research needs to be done, and hopefully I can do that. Here we have a Jewish family from Kaifeng from 1900, and another Jewish family from Kaifeng from 1907. And as you can see, they are fully assimilated. Because of the lucrative profits from the silk trade, Persians and Arabs dominated the trade. However, there are many Jewish settlements on the Silk Road, and they are active in trade as well. While most of the Jews were mainly weavers and dyers of cotton, cloth, and silk, the Jewish merchants known as Radhanites, translation knowing the way, regularly engaged in trade on the Silk Road. According to the Babylonian Talmud, the Jews started settling in cities along the Silk Road as early as the 4th century CE, and most likely much earlier. The common Aramaic language encouraged their settlement and involvement in the international trade. A Persian writer in about 850 CE recorded the journeys of the Jewish traders, the Radhanites, who linked the Frankish and Chinese kingdoms by land and sea. It is worth pointing that at the time of Christian-Muslim animosity, when many trade routes were blocked, Jews were the best equipped to carry out the trade from Asia to Europe. The Jewish merchants also served as bankers and religious mediators. Due to the growing trade on the Silk Road, there was a need for the establishment of a credit system. The Jews were seen as the most qualified to handle credit transactions and act as commercial mediators for the simple reason that you're free of any religious prohibition against usury. The Knight Templars used the same type of system later on, a system maybe learned from the Silk Road Jewish traders. It is clear that the Jews played an active role on the Silk Road as merchants, as weavers, and also as bankers, becoming the most dominant group of people dwelling in the area during that period. The famous Venetian traveler Marco Polo, who visited China then under the Yuan dynasty in the late 13th century, described the prominence of the Jewish traders in Beijing. In conclusion, the Silk Road may be identified with the Chinese merchants dealing with silk. However, it cannot be denied that the Jewish settlements in these areas had also their own shares in the business transactions alongside Arabs and other dwellers. The Silk Road, however, will continue to remain a legacy of the Chinese people. My quest is to continue on-the-ground exploration of the Magao Caves and of the Jewish Silk Road. Anyone interested in joining us on that road of discovery is welcome. These fascinating caves will be showcased via the VR project. The Dunhuang Foundation and Professor Eric Hanson, the VR developer, are in the planning stages of adding some 25 caves to the ones already on the platform. My gratitude to Eric for his amazing VR work and patience in teaching me the intricacies of the Oculus 2 VR and ways to explore the 4 caves already captured. As you'll see from his presentation, the VR simply is not only a fascinating tool for tourist purposes, but a proper scientific research one. The ability to showcase in great details the existing art, coupled with the capacity to virtually bring back into the caves all those treasures scattered around the world, will be an unprecedented achievement. The public at large, as well as the scientific world, can greatly benefit from such a far-reaching project. Of course, my gratitude to Professor Duke for taking on the challenging work in deciphering the Hebrew scroll and subsequently the Syriac scroll, working with me in piecing together the history of the Jewish and Christian merchants on the Silk Road. Professor Duke spent the past 2 years researching not only the Magao Hebrew and Syriac scrolls, but expanded his research to other scrolls from China that ended up in the US and European museums. It is my sincere hope that I was able to give you a glimpse into the grandeur of the Magao Caves and of the Jewish Silk Road that did not end in the Middle Ages, but continued uninterrupted till today. And I am but one example of a Jewish trader on China's Silk Road. 1,000 years after our Babylonian Persian Jewish merchant traveled via Dunhuang into China, 2 Iraqi Jewish families in the 19th and 20th century, the Sassoons and the Kaduris, established themselves in Shanghai and Hong Kong, contributing immensely to the Chinese economy and helping create modern China. In turn, they became the first billionaires, richest people of the time in China. It's a fascinating story, a testament to the continued and prolific tradition of the Jewish merchants on the Silk Road. And that's the end of my presentation. As a side note and kind of continuation on the subject of this lecture, on April 15, the Dunhuang Foundation will host the curator of the Aurel Stein collection from the Magao Library Cave at the British Museum, Anyone interested in listening to this presentation, please email me and I'll forward you the link. With this, thank you so much for your attention, and please allow me to introduce Professor Robert Duke.
Well, good evening, and it is my pleasure to join you today as I am opening my screen. It was during an event with the American Friends of Hebrew University that Vladdy and I first met and had our conversation about the material. And it really was eye-opening for me, since most of my work had been with the Dead Sea Scrolls. I can't thank Hebrew University enough, because it was during that year in 2000, 2001, when I was a Rotary Ambassadorial Scholar, that the doors opened for me to go to UCLA to finish my PhD. So I thought, because of the nature of this event, and many of you also being alumni of Hebrew University in various ways, that you've all been shaped in very powerful ways with your experience in there. So I'll show a couple of pictures here at the beginning of that year that I was there. It was a difficult year, if you remember 2000, 2001, with the beginning of the Second Intifada. It was one where Rotary tried to recall the 4 or 5 of us that were at Hebrew University and have us go to different locations. And I begged and said, please let me stay here. They did provide extra funds, and I stayed off of public transportation. And so I took cabs all over Jerusalem and everywhere else for that year. Here is during that year, I had to be a de facto member of a local Rotary Club. And this is the Rotary Club that meets at the YMCA across from the King David Hotel. And that year, we also got to participate in the Great Sukkot Parade through Jerusalem, as we had this banner here of Rotary for the service of the community. Now, the very end of that year, because of the connections you make, I was able to help with a salvage dig at Qumran. And this was right at the end of that 2001, just a few months before I went to UCLA. So my haircut's a little different than it was 20 years ago. But the connections to Hebrew University still continue with my own university, Azusa Pacific University and Hebrew University, that are jointly partnering for a dig in northern Israel at Tel Avel Beit Ma'acha. We've had some very exciting finds, particularly the figurine head that you can see here that is on display at the Israel Museum. And to the left of the picture is Dr. Nava Panetz Cohen, who is at Hebrew University. And the last time we were able to connect, we had coffee right outside the Frank Sinatra building there at the main campus. So we did have to cancel our dig last summer. So here's our figurine head with the socially distanced mask. But it's one where we are going to be having some weeks this summer that's going to be opening again. So again, my eternal gratitude to Hebrew University and Rotary for making that year possible. So as I mentioned, I began my research at UCLA on Aramaic documents found at Qumran. So many of you are familiar with K4. Over the years, I've gotten interested in these various collections that are there. So Qumran being a library. I've done some work on the Cairo Geniza. So here's Solomon Schechter at the Cairo Geniza. And I will joke with my students that this is what a biblical scholar should look like. Maybe that's why after the figurine head with its beard, I started growing mine too. But then we have Paul Pelio, and it was after meeting Vladdy that I started digging into the various material at Dunhuang and getting very interested in the differences between these other collections. So for example, Qumran is really the collection of one group that withdrew basically from society at that time 2,000 years ago along the Dead Sea. The Cairo Geniza is hundreds and hundreds of years of a collection during the Middle Ages, and even has material, say, from Maimonides. Whereas this Dunhuang material shows the very kind of pluralistic nature of the Silk Road, where we have documents in dozens of languages, dozens of religious groups. So it is really a fascinating kind of look at these different important manuscript discovery places that had very different purposes when they were in existence. Now, the conversations of the relationship between China, the Silk Road, and Europe will continue, and even these kinds of conversations today continue to open that door. So not too long ago, Smithsonian Magazine talked about a kind of surprising discovery of a medieval Chinese coin in an excavation in England. So was there more connections earlier than were known? Now, before I met Vladdy and started looking at the Dunhuang material, I had already been aware of the Kaifeng material. So roughly where this blue pyramid is on this map is where Kaifeng is located on the far eastern end of the Silk Road. Some of the material that I'll show here, just to give you an example, is a section of Torah, a parashah from the book of Exodus. So we have here at the very beginning of Exodus chapter 10, verse 1, Vayomer Adonai el Moshe, and so on. And you can notice the kind of expected vowel points that are there. And why I point that out is in a minute here, I will be showing you the Hebrew text from Dunhuang, and you will see that the vowel points are different. Also known from Kaifeng, and most of this material is probably 17th, 16th, 17th century, is a Passover Haggadah. And you can see here a Haggadah that was used, again, several hundred years ago there in Eastern China. Now, some interesting things to point out is here when you have what's called the Tetragrammaton, the name for the Lord, it's written as 3 yods with a line over the top. And we're going to see that actually show up in the Dunhuang material. We also have texts where you have Hebrew and Chinese intermixed. Various lists of people that were connected to that community. So you can see names like Abraham, Ben Israel, and so on. So that was from Kaifeng, again, over in the eastern side of the Silk Road, whereas the blue triangle on this slide roughly shows where the Dunhuang Caves are located. Now, just to give you a sense of how much material has been found, a book that I picked up in the last year or so is written by a Chinese scholar, translated and published by Brill. And it's called 18 Lectures on Dunhuang. It's about 450 pages. And there is not one mention in all of this text about Hebrew or Syriac material that I'll be showing you. And that's just because of the immense amount of material, particularly the art history and other things that came out of these caves. So turning our attention to the text that Vladdy mentioned, you have it here. It's roughly about the size of a kind of a normal sheet of paper, and you can tell that it was folded in half. So there is a line right in the middle of the document that we can partially reconstruct, but it obviously has been damaged over the centuries of being in the caves. So a transcription on the right with the photograph on the left. You can see that it's 18 lines of text. The top line has disappeared a little bit. The bottom line has disappeared some. And with some better photography, I'm hoping that someday down the road, we can get a very modern, very high quality photograph of this that can help us piece in some of the missing pieces. But a quick just overview of the translation shows that this text is just a sewing together of different passages from the Hebrew Bible. Very similar in genre to what we call a slichot, the slichot genre, as we have these texts woven together. I'll come back to this text in a minute, but just to kind of show you the international nature of the scholarly community that works on this material, there is something called the International Dunhuang Project that is easily accessible online. It is a website that you can search not just textual remains, but also art and other things that were found in the caves. And even one, I was speaking to a group of students last week who are more advanced language scholars, and I let them know that there are places on this website where you can submit your own translations, bibliography, and so on to work on this material and get your kind of to cut your teeth in doing translational work. This is housed at the British Library, but if you review this site, you'll see that there are documents that are spread over about a dozen institutions in Europe, in Asia, in different parts of even North America where items are scattered. Now, I mentioned the Kaifeng documents that are very clearly the Tiberian vocalization system that we are very familiar with if we read, say, the Masoretic text or other Aleppo Codex and such. But the text from Dunhuang actually has superlinear not sublinear vowel points, and that is the Babylonian system. So Vladi mentioned earlier that we have most likely merchants coming onto the Silk Road from what would be today modern day Iraq. Now, this text was very personal in nature. Unlike, say, if you go to the Israel Museum and go below the Shrine of the Book and see the Aleppo Codex, a very, very fine, the accuracy is amazing. This one you get a sense that the scribe was maybe hearing it and then writing what they heard. So here is the passage from Micah 7:18, Miel Kamocha Nosei Avon, which here you can see Miel becomes one word. And if you think if the word Miel, if you say it quickly, it makes sense that someone would have written it as Mem Yod Yod Lamed. Kamocha is correct, but then Nosei has a samak here when we had expected a scene. And then Avon is the same there. So there are some of these variants that are interesting to note and are very common throughout this text. I'll show a couple other examples as we look at this text. So here we have a section from Numbers 14:9. The Masoretic text is here with what it shows up in the text right there below it. And again, it makes sense why there are some variants. And it's more of hearing it audibly versus seeing it. We do see some of these kinds of variants also when you look at the Dead Sea Scrolls from Qumran. A couple interesting variants are things where we have different words. So for example, in this one, you gave to those who fear you in the Masoretic text, whereas the one on the Dunhuang text is le'amcha, to your people. To those who fear you or to your people, basically synonymous concepts, but are things to note and the kinds of things scholars note when they're looking at textual variants. Now I mentioned earlier the 3 yods, and here we have on the Dunhuang text 3 yods for what's called the Tetragrammaton, the 4-letter name for the Lord. So these 3 yods there are consistent on this text because we also have in line 17 here where it says, because you, O Lord, his God. We have also here the 3 yods that are there. Now in manuscripts dating back all the way to times of Qumran, the Tetragrammaton is often written in a unique way. Some of you may have seen the news a couple weeks ago of the new Greek Hebrew prophets text that was found at Qumran, or not too far, just south of Qumran. But it has the Greek translation of the Hebrew prophets. But then whenever the Tetragrammaton is there, it switches to Paleo-Hebrew. So a very unique text that was just found in the last couple of weeks at Qumran. So again, scholars who have a lot of time to invest have written whole works on just how the Tetragrammaton is displayed. And there is a section in this article that is about 30 pages on all the different ways that you see 3 yods show up. So a small little tangent of research that still can be done is to see even the 3 yods on the Dunhuang text, the 3 yods that we see at Kaifeng, and what other types of documents, maybe even from Cairo, show this. Because we do have some Cairo Geniza material that show 3 yods. The TS here at the top of the slide stands for the Taylor Schechter collection. It is at Cambridge in Cambridge, England. I know we have a couple of people on this call that said they were from Cambridge, Massachusetts. This is from the other Cambridge, the inferior Cambridge, let's just say that. The Taylor Schechter collection. But here we have the 3 yods in place of the Tetragrammaton. Now this one's written like a triangle, so it's very, very different. We have another text that has 3 yods with a line over the top that looks almost identical to what we saw at Kaifeng. So some of these scribal practices are things to note in all these various documents. So again, the Hebrew text, very fascinating and really gives us insights. And there is a lot more work still to be done on this text. I would love to spend a little time in the near future finding any other texts that we might have. There are Jewish magic bowls that we know of that have text woven on them. And it'd be interesting to see if we have any connections of these same passages being used. So turning our attention, I show this map here because just kind of just above the exhibition of the Buddhism library, kind of in this area there on the text, is where the Hebrew document was found. North in the northern grottos area is where the Syriac text that has recently come to light is from. So this is a two-sided document. It would have been part of a book. So what we have here actually is the exact center page of a book. Somehow the rest of the book disappeared. Maybe it'll be discovered in future excavations, but it is from the book of Psalms. It is Syriac. Syriac is a language that was used by Eastern Christians. Their whole canon is called the Peshitta. In this cave, you also had a couple other items. There was a 5th century CE Persian coin, a little cross that was found in this cave. And to date, there's only been a German article that has worked on this text. It is one where there is a lot of Syriac material, but because of the just immense amount of other material, particularly Buddhist material that has received the most attention, there is work to be done still on this material. So let me just quickly go over and tell a little bit about this text. Again, I said it's two-sided. It was used liturgically. I will show you briefly here in a minute that it had no scribal variants to really to speak of, and it was then used in a liturgical way versus a personal way. On this page, top right is sections from Psalm 25, bottom right, Psalm 28, top left is Psalm 15, and bottom left is Psalm 17. When you flip this one page over, you then have at the top right, Psalm 21, bottom left is Psalm 23 with the end of Psalm 23, verse 4 at the top of the second column. Then you have in the middle, Psalm 24, and at the bottom, Psalm 25, which was on the other side. So you have a document that was that middle page of a book, and therefore we have the exact middle page with Psalm 23 crossing over. Now there are some what we call paratextual features here. The red ink that you can see is actually giving days of the week. So right here, this is Arba de Sheva, so the 4th of the week. This one over here is the 5th, Chamsha de Shava, the 5th of the week. So it is what you read from the Psalms on Wednesday and on Thursday. So let you see what that looks like. Here's the word for, Arba, and then here we have the word for week. This other phrase that's there just actually says its partner. So you would read one psalm, probably in the morning, and you'd read another one in the evening in this Syriac Christian reading tradition. Now we do know from other texts that are known that PB here stands for a scholar who worked on Syriac liturgical texts, and this text matches identically with what we know of Syriac reading traditions in other places. And again, PB here stands for a man named Paul Bejian. And I was showing some students recently that they can pick this book up and do some research on this stuff too if they have $1,500 to spend. So that's why we need libraries that can have this kind of material. So just to give you one of this text and to show the kind of fidelity to whatever manuscripts they were copying, because this one was definitely copied from seeing it. This is the Psalm 23 section. So here we have the very beginning of Psalm 23, the Lord in Syriac. The difference with this and what we know from all other Syriac liturgical texts is all the other ones have a superscript before the text actually begins. These do not have the superscript. So it's from a time before those superscripts became stabilized. Again, here we have it, gets all the way through, I fear no evil, for you are with me, at the very bottom line. And then it jumps up to the top line in this picture of this one section here that then includes that your rod and your staff, they comfort me, and then it stops. So it doesn't actually complete all of Psalm 23. Is that because they didn't need to, they already knew it, so they would fill it in themselves, or is that where they finished the reading for that day? I think those are some questions that still need to be answered. So quickly in conclusion, when you compare the Hebrew document versus the Syriac document, Psalm 25 is actually present on both of these documents, which is interesting. Of all the texts that could have been found, You have a Hebrew and a Syriac document at Dunhuang that both have the same psalm on them. The Hebrew was for personal use. The Syriac was for liturgical use. The Hebrew document does have many scribal variants when compared to the Masoretic text, whereas the Syriac has very, very few scribal variants that shows a different usage of the text. I know as Vladdy and I have talked, we've wondered, is this a set of verses on the Hebrew text that were important, significant, special to that traveler, and they kept them with them, and somehow it got lost in Dunhuang and put in the caves somewhere along the way. I don't know if we'll ever know for sure, but we can surmise. So with that, I will pause, because what I've found most interesting about Dunhuang, being on the Silk Road, is a place that had merchants and scholars and scribes. Even to do the research on this takes business people, scholars, people who know modern technology. And that is why I turn it over to Professor Eric Hanson to tell us a little bit about the virtual reality project that he's working on with Dunhuang.
Fantastic. Thank you, Robert. That was terrific. Let me share screen now. One moment. And here we go. Well, great. Well, I really appreciate speaking to you all tonight. This has been a great cultural project for me. I make no illusions to be a historian or an archaeologist, though I love working with them. And I think it has to do with maybe the aging period I'm going through, where you get more interested in history the older you get. At least I find I do. But I am a technical computer graphics artist. I used to work in feature film. And I just, to be honest, I got tired of the kind of the content that I was working on. It just kind of felt it was exciting as I was younger. And as I got older, it was like, I'm not sure I really enjoy a lot of this. So I decided to turn my attention and my skills to natural history and cultural heritage, primarily, seeing that there's lots of great opportunities in using computer graphics and technical artwork to assist, I think, the historians that do work in these fields. So I cannot give you any interpretation of what I will show you. This is just simply the work that we have done to document, and most importantly, allow you to feel present in these caves through virtual reality, which is a tremendous new media that we have to utilize for this. So let me continue on. Let me get in my slideshow mode. We use a technique called photogrammetry, which is, I'm not going to make this a technical talk whatsoever, but here, if I play this little video, we can see the active as a time lapse, not real time, of my partner taking hundreds of images in the caves. And this is another device, a rig that I had constructed to allow me to shoot hundreds or thousands of images very rapidly. This is using a flash device in a way that we can get a more natural color, but we use different, and we also do multispectral type of work. So we use a lot of different kind of acquisition techniques based in photography. What we get from all that, rather than a large collection of photographs though, is actually a congregation of all those photographs designed to recreate the space in 3 dimensions. So this is the first step in the process, where common points are discovered from all the photographs. The next one is the reconstruction of a solid surface. So we can kind of, it's almost like this was sculpted out of mud, say, or plaster. And then finally, we take all the images, all the pixels of all those images, and reapply them back to the model. And we can get an extremely realistic and just super highly detailed rendition of what these cave structures are, both in the 2D artwork as well as the sculptural forms. So if we get in a little closer, we can see this tremendous amount of detail, and even look at it with the beauty of natural light and so forth. So what I'm going to do now is actually let me start another process, and I'll take you through some of the caves in VR. And I'm going to put a VR headset on. I don't know, hopefully you won't be able to see me. And then I will actually take you through our presentation, the work that we've done for the Dunhuang Foundation for the last 3 years. And as Vladdy indicated, this is an ongoing project. We hope to go back and we have captured, I think, 7 caves so far. We hope to go back and do an additional 25. So this is just a wonderful project. It's been one of the highlights of my career to be able to help document this terribly important and beautiful work. So now what I'm going to do when I start this playing is you're going to hear some background audio, and you'll also hear some narration of actually one of the foundation's executive directors. But in this case, I'm going to let him speak when he does, but I'm going to try to dance around his spoken word, and I'll take you through. So let me let this load up, and I'm going to get my headset ready here. Hopefully the volume will be okay. There we go.
Welcome to the Mogao Caves. Select the introduction icon for the full experience, the simple tour for an overview, or locate a specific cave with the cave's icon.
Okay, so I'll take us into the caves now. You can see I have these hand controllers that are represented.
You are now on the grounds of the Mogao Caves. You are looking at the modern cliff facade, which was stabilized in the 1960s by the Chinese government. Point your controller to the cave number to select it.
Okay, I'm going to begin on cave 275, and we've done something unique here in that we've darkened the space and given you a flashlight. So if you can tell, I'm actually holding a flashlight in my hand virtually, and I'm in this space. Now, this cave is very small, and we have these graphic icons that are a little garish. But if I land on one, an audio segment will begin to talk about sections of this cave. What I'm going to do, though, is I can actually, let's see here, have another means of moving throughout the space. So if I land into this one, it'll become daylight. And this is a daylight version of this cave. Now, this is in 3 dimensions. So as I rock my body from side to side on either foot, you can see I'm experiencing a sense of presence here because I'm getting parallax or movement in the perspective. And again, this is not as impressive on a flat 2D screen, but with a headset, wearing a headset, seeing this in 3 dimensions is a very powerful thing. But we can also use this technology to tell stories. So what I'll do here is I'll land into this ring, which says Buddha Construction, and this will show.
Artists created the statues at Dunhuang on a wooden framework, or armature, of logs and sticks. They added lightweight bundles of reeds to shape the figures and covered these reeds with plaster mud from the nearby river. The mud was sculpted into a general outline before being finally molded with various tools.
Okay. And then I can also move myself into position very close to the sculpture for close inspection. Okay. So this is just an introduction. I'm going to leave the cave now by landing into the exit.
Point your controller to the cave number to select it.
And now I'm going to move to 428. This is one of the truly spectacular caves. Again, I can land in these. I'm going to avoid these so that I don't have to overtalk Christian. But I'm going to move closer to the cave and just gaze around this rather spectacular array of artwork. Again, I can move with fidelity. I can actually walk around. So as you might imagine, I'm stepping forward to the sculpture. So it's really a virtual visitation, if you will. The other thing we've done to create some opportunity here is if I hold this down on the ground, you can see there's an invisible scaffold. Actually, 2 dimensions. I'm going to get a little closer. And what I'm going to do is use that as a stairwell, and I'll land up higher. Now I've got a platform below me, and I'll move up to the highest right here. I'm not going to move on the audio section.
The small Buddha motifs that cover the wall are fashioned using applique techniques. This means that each of the small Buddhas was individually created using clay molds and then attached to the wall surface. This method was lavish and time-consuming, showing the pious nature of the cave's donors.
Okay, I'm going to land back down and for much of our time.
Point your controller to the cave number to select it.
And this is 158. This is absolutely remarkable space and amount of artwork. Now, the artwork here is so fine and detailed, and we shot this at what's called gigapixel resolution. So we've taken thousands of images to aggregate all the immense detail. I could put my nose right up on that wall surface and examine the art in extreme detail. But up in the ceiling, this is out of reach. So what we did is we developed an interactive technique. I'm looking at my two hands now. I'm going to turn both of them, and one is a camera, and one is like an iPad. And now I can move that camera down and observe the detail that we captured, extremely fine detail. And if I bring it away from my hand, face rather, it gets smaller or closer. Our next step with this is to allow researchers to annotate and capture and share these views. And we can also use this as in a database where we can show the images that contributed to this section of the model. Okay. So this has been a real interesting thing for researchers. The other fascinating thing we can do here is because, again, like the other cave, it would be tremendous to have some higher views here. So what I can do, same thing, is I have a higher platform, and I'll stand right here down the length of the Buddha and get a view that no visitor can see. But yet in virtual reality, no harm done. And as a matter of fact, we even in building this this model, we even found a bird nest placed hidden on the top of that Buddha's head in the hair structure. And again, probably no one ever knew that. We discovered that from our process. But again, here we can see some rather remarkable artwork of the different states of emotion that is happening from the Buddha entering samsara. And we see this fabulous artwork. So again, what I'm going to do here is turn, and let's look at some of these visages closer. And there's just an amazing array of portraiture available here. Lastly, I can move down the length of this and see the sculpture from a remarkable position. And again, this will invoke a story talking about this particular artwork. See that at the end here. But again, in a VR headset, this is a remarkably present and kind of arresting thing to see. Lastly, I'll move over to this other platform. And we put a floor here because it made some people nervous, actually, to be floating up here. But now we can see this amazing artwork right at arm's length, and the fine line work and remarkable color this has held over the years. So I don't need a magnifier here. I can just kind of walk this length and examine this artwork as if I was a researcher on site. Okay, so I'm going to leave this now.
Point your controller to the cave number to select it.
And I have one last small piece of work to show you that Vladi was interested in looking at. And this is if we imagine using VR to go into the Cave 17. Okay, so this is just a very fast little slideshow of entering Cave 16 and 17. We saw a few of these slides earlier, I think in Vladi's talk. And as we turn right, we can see the discovered entrance of Cave 17. Now there is a resident Buddha sculpture in here. I don't think it was original. Vladi Robert can talk more expertly about that. But if we imagine this to be brought back, and maybe that sculpture taken away and the scrolls built up in the cave, stored in the cave, it may be something like this. So this is a computer graphic reconstruction that I've made. And then here you'll see two hand controllers and kind of the idea that we could pull scrolls out of known writings, open them. This is the Hebrew scroll. And then actually query for translation. And again, this could be documented and used as a kind of a virtual research tool. Okay, well that concludes what I have to show. So thank you very much. I'll go ahead and unshare my screen.
Thank you very much. And we are going to now open the floor up. I'm just going to open the floor to questions. I'm also putting the link in for next week's Torch Talks event. So again, if you have questions for our very distinguished speakers, Mindy, if you can stop sharing your screen, please. Thank you. So if you have questions, please use the chat box. We did get a few during the presentations. I will try and go back and find. I know a couple of people, besides saying brilliant use of VR and saying how amazing it was, they want to know, is travel possible to the caves and are private tours given?
Yeah, go ahead, Vladi. I have one thing to add to that. Please go.
Yeah, well, China is not open yet for US visitors. We don't think this year will be possible. We hope very early next year. Private tours, yes, are possible. One way, and probably the best way, is to become a member of the Dunhuang Foundation and go with the foundation to the caves. Or if it happens that you can go to China at the same time that I go, and obviously I have the privilege of private tour, then of course you can join me. But again, email me or email Eric, or we'll let you know when China opens up.
Okay, let me add one quick thing. Do you mind if I share again, Miriam?
Sure.
I forgot to show you this. This may be a cheaper alternative for you in the meantime. If you go to blueplanetvr.com, this is my website. And if you go down here to recent work, I already have it preloaded here. And if you find this icon, which is definitively Buddhist, you can click on that. And this is the page documenting what we did. There's some animation here and some examples of these models. But most importantly is the foundation last year wanted to share this more publicly. And it's not, so this doesn't require a VR headset, but if you double click or click once and then double click on this virtual tour, you can actually go in here, click on a cave, and you can see we're back now. Actually, we didn't go to 285, but here's 285, and you can click on different views. So this is a standard virtual tour technique. But again, these are our 3D models, but rendered in a way that you can navigate and see these for yourself in a browser. So I just wanted to point that out. Again, there's only 4, I think, caves involved, but could be useful.
Okay, great. And just for everyone to know, in the follow-up emails, we will be sharing the email addresses for everyone as well as the recording to this. We also got a question earlier asking about if there was a lot of intermarriage, I think, between the Jewish merchants and the local Chinese.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. That's how, when I showed the pictures of the Chinese families from the 1900s, they were all assimilated. In the beginning, and Robert can concur with me later on, in the beginning, obviously, the Jewish merchants that they were traveling on the Silk Road, and you're talking about 4th century, 5th century, 7th century, 10th century, going on that road for many years. They were not bringing their wives with them because of the tremendous hardship to be on such a road. But I would guess those that decided to establish themselves and stay in China, in Kaifeng and other cities later on, they brought their families. Now, as time passed, obviously the population of original Persians or Iraqis or Judeans diminished, and they intermarried with Chinese that converted, because the tradition remained strong till the 19th, 20th century. Therefore, yes, there were plenty of intermarriages, and eventually they all became, Chinese Jews. It will be interesting to have a DNA research to see exactly if they have the AB type of the Middle Easterns, or what part Middle Eastern is still in their DNA.
Great. We had an earlier question. I believe this one will be from Robert. You mentioned something about a Jewish magic bowl.
Right, so I responded directly to
Okay.
Sarah Siegel, but I'll
Okay.
drop it in for everyone here. So here's a link to the research project on these, and it's actually Professor Shaul Shaked from Hebrew University that's one of the major collaborators on this. And it's these Aramaic bowls, and they've been found by the hundreds in kind of that Western Silk Road in modern day Iraq and places like that. But I can give you a sense, but even if you go to the link, you'll see photos where it is Jewish Aramaic that's written in a kind of a circular way on these bowls. And most of them had scriptures woven into them. And the reason why they're sometimes referenced as magic bowls is because that was a genre that you had, because they were many of these bowls in different languages from roughly kind of 500, 600, 700 AD. So right around the time where you also have kind of the beginnings of the Silk Road and all of that. So it's research that's going on with those two, basically out of Exeter, England, is where a lot of that's being done.
Got it. And then I believe it was Harriet who wanted to know if the Silk Road is still in use.
Well, of course, there is the modern Silk Road that China reestablished. It's called the Belt and Road, Road, based on the ancient Silk Road, where China is reestablishing all the trade routes of the ancient people in the modern era. Well, obviously, nobody will travel by camel from the Middle East to China today, but well, the Chinese Silk Road, like I'm on that Chinese Silk Road every year, going for business from south to north, from east to west, and so many other people. But the traditional Silk Road that we talk about obviously does not exist as an active trade route going by foot. You go by plane, by bullet trains, etc., etc.
Understood. So I'll do a last call for any questions before we close out. While I'm waiting for that, again, just a very big thank you to all three of our presenters this evening. It was really fascinating, and hopefully, the VR will hold us over until we can all really travel again. But thank you again to all our speakers and to everyone who's joining. I think a lot of people hopefully got a lot of information out of this, and on a very unique topic that we wouldn't necessarily get an opportunity to learn about otherwise. So thank you again.